चित्तस्य पदेन वाचां मलं शरीरस्य च वैद्यकेन योपाकरोत्तं प्रवरं मुनीनां पातञ्जलिं प्राञ्जलिरानतोऽस्मि. I prostrate with folded hands before Patanjali, who benefited mankind by delivering yoga for mind, grammar for speech, and by removing impurities of the body through medicine. So, in the last class, we were studying the 18th and the 19th Sutra of the second chapter of Patanjali Yoga Sutra, which deals with the drishya, the world which we are perceiving. What's the nature of it? How the perception happens? What's the mode of perception? Once we know that, it helps us spiritually by being aware of the fact that the world which we take as if for granted to be something tangible, real, to be something which is palpably, tangibly visible as true, we will find that the way the yoga shastra has dealt with the mode of perception, that how the perception is happening, how our psychology evolves, our mind evolves to as if project the world of reality, that itself, that awareness itself becomes the cause of detachment. Very nicely in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, Sri Ramakrishna says a very interesting thing, that once you recognize Maya, the Maya flees. And he gives a very nice example. The small children were all playing, and suddenly an elderly person who happens to be the uncle of all those children in the joint family, he just wears the bear skin and comes and enters the room where the children were playing and starts scaring them. The children were scared, they were terrified, they were screaming. And suddenly one of the small child, one small girl, she somehow understood that it's not the real bear. It's our uncle who has actually taken the disguise of the bear by wearing the bear skin to scare us. So she immediately shouts out, "Oh, it's you, the uncle." The moment the girl shouts out that, "Oh, you, the uncle now understands that in no way he can continue to scare them, all the children. So he opens the bear skin. So this is the story which Sri Ramakrishna says to explain the fact that Maya in so many ways, the ignorance, avidya in so many ways, is as if forcing us to go through the various experiences of life. Maybe some of them are pleasurable, some of them are full of misery, sorrow, but they are not real. At the moment, like the children, we decipher its real nature. We can unmask it. Immediately, it loses its strength. It can no more scare us. So, to know Maya itself is a great leap in your spiritual journey. So, as we told that though the scripture, though this all these sutras to certain extent appear to be abstract, but its intention, ultimately its intention is to make us aware of the fact that the drishya, the thing which we are witnessing, is actually the world of virtual reality. It's not the thing which uh, we can take it as something real. So that's the thing we have been just discussing. And we saw that what was being discussed there, that the entire drishya is actually nothing but the mutation of the three gunas: sattva, raja, and tama. So this sattva, raja, tama actually speaks of the stimuli response conditioning. If we try to understand it in the modern terminology, it can be actually explained as the stimuli response conditioning. What is sattva? If you just study thoroughly the scriptures and try to find out how sattva has been defined, sattva has been defined as illumination. Let us take the particular clue from the scripture to understand what sattva is. Sattva is illumination. First point. The organs of perceptions are pure sattva. The eyes, these are the organs of perception. The eyes, the ears, the nose, by which I am smelling, the tongue, by which I taste, and the skin, by which I touch. These five senses of perception are pure sattva. So the first clue is sattva is pure illumination. The organs of perception, the jnanendriyas, these five organs of jnanendriya are pure sattva. And what is rajas? Rajas is activity. And the five organs of action, the karmendriyas, pancha karmendriya, are rajas, pure rajas. What are the five organs of action? All the actions which we do is done by the five organs of action. What are they? The two hands, the two feet, hasta, pada, vak, the speech. The tongue was used for tasting the food, and again the vak, the speech, is used for as a karmendriya to just speak, to or speech is the vak. The place is the same, but when I am perceiving something, then that is used for tasting, and when I'm using it as an organ of action, then it finds expression as the vak. And what else? The organ of excretion and the organ of procreation. So these are the five organs of action. And the scriptures have spoken that they are the pure rajas. So the clue, again, you find that for rajas, it's action, and the organs of action are the seat of the rajas. And what is tamas? They speak of pancha tanmatra, which conglomerates as pancha bhuta. This is tamas. So now, generally, the way we understand tamas, when we speak of pancha bhuta, pancha tanmatra, as the external world, the way we see it, and most probably the subatomic particles are the tanmatras. So if we try to understand that way, we can never find what actually has been spoken of as the three guna. What actually the tanmatras mean? Tanmatras actually mean the piecemeal perception. It's something which even the modern science will ascertain to. That what's the piecemeal perception? That how our perceptions are happening? Very interesting. When you are watching the movie, forget about just the real perception when I'm dealing with our day-to-day life with a person, just when I'm watching the movie. Very interesting thing. In the movie, in the screen, some character is speaking, and the sound comes from the sound box. But when I'm watching the movie, what happens? Do I feel that the sound is coming from the sound box and the one who is speaking, he's a different person? No. Somehow you will find that they are synchronized in such a way, I feel the character is speaking. But actually, the words are not coming out. The sound is not coming out from the mouth of the character which has been projected in the screen. It is coming from the sound box. But why I feel the character is speaking? Because the mind does the wonderful job. The one who is speaking, the vision, is getting synchronized with the sound. two are coming from two different sources. The vision is coming from the screen and the sound is coming from the sound box. But as the mind synthesizes that, these two different piecemeal perceptions, I feel the character is speaking. So that's how all the perceptions are happening. The external world, whatever I am seeing, the thing, when I'm seeing the red flower, a very wonderful fragrance, and when I touch, there's a soft touch. All these sensations I feel is of the flower. What actually is happening? I pluck the flower, I am sensing it with my hand, wonderful fragrance is coming, the color, the vibrant color I am seeing, and I attribute everything to the flower. But what is happening? The entire flower is not entering my mind as a whole. The color is perceived separately with the color perception center. Its form is perceived with the form perception center. These are different. The perception center of the color doesn't match with the perception center of the form. It can be very easily understood. Those who have the, the aberration, like the color blindness, or you just there is not color blindness, even there are some person who see particular alphabet, particular digits as particular color. Say the uh, numeral 7, when the 7 may be printed in red color, may be printed in white, may be printed in blue, there are certain person who always see that 7 as red. What has happened? Somehow these two centers of perception, the color perception and the form perception, this numerical or the alphabet for perception center, the two different centers but are very nearly placed. Because of some aberration, some defect, these two gets short circuited. The red color has got short circuited with a digit, and whenever that person sees that digit, it sees in a wonderful color. Such persons exact the name of that disease. We won't say disease, the different way of perception, that other way of perception such these persons have. Such persons have prolific memory. You know why? Very interesting. They're very prolific memory. Now, when we are reading a book, you will find that we have the habit that when certain points we want to highlight, we will highlight with some particular color. With all those color, when we highlight, we can just simply analyze the text, and it helps us to retain. For those person, as a particular alphabet or a particular digit is in a particular color, the entire book gets highlighted, all the various colors and everything, and it becomes easy for that person to study it very analytically, and that enables them to have a prolific memory. So what we are saying is, why we are saying all those things, just to say that these organs of perceptions are all separate. We never feel it because the mind is synthesizing them in such a nice way. When I see the flower, the redness, the form, all are perceived in different center. The fragrance, everything is perceived, its texture, when I'm touching it, all are perceived in different centers. This all perceptions are at last synthesized to give a feeling of wholeness, which actually is not the thing which is out there. So why we are saying these piecemeal perceptions are the tanmatras, not the subatomic particles. These piecemeal perceptions, when they are synthesizing, they become the bhuta. This world, the way I see it, this is the bhuta. So now, very interesting thing. What you will understand, that when you're in deep sleep, my mind is not blank. Generally, with no basic knowledge of neurology, we may feel that my mind is blank. The external world, with its form, with its sound, with its all smell, is there to pour into the empty mind to give the perception. No. What is happening? All those concepts are already there in the potential form in my mind. They are the tanmatras. Why they have been called tamas? But as long as the external world as a suggestion is not there, they are not finding any expression. They are in the darkness. So tamas is darkness, and these tanmatras are the sit house of that tamas. So it is in dark. At night, as we were giving example, at the when you night you were sleeping, your mind was not something empty. All those perceptions in the potential form were there. Morning you wake up, just look out. There's a wonderful flower in your garden. What has happened when you see the flower? Those tanmatras now are getting that activated because of that external suggestion. So this perception illumines the dark mind. There's all those concepts in the mind where there this external perception is activating them, illuminating them. So the tamas is getting mutated, converted into sattva perception. And immediately after that, what happens? Now, if I'm a devotee, I feel like offering that flower to the divine in the altar in my house. In a corner of my house, there's an altar. So I feel like offering. So I move out, pluck the flower, bring and offer it to the divine. So this is the activity. That stimuli now gets converted into rajas. For that, you have to use your organs of action, your hand, your feet. You move out with your feet, you go and pluck with your hand, come and offer it to the divine. So organs of actions are there. That's why it is pure rajas. When you're seeing with the eye, it's pure perception. That's why it is sattva with your ears. So now you will find that if you just can uh, weave up all the clues which are given in the scripture, you will find a wonderful thing. That when the scripture is saying this world is nothing but Tri Gunatmika, it is actually speaking of the way that we are perceiving the universe. It's not explaining the external universe. It's actually explaining the psychology of perception, how it is happening. And once you understand that, you will find it is the mind is actually projecting the universe. The external universe as such, we don't know what it is there. Yes, the scripture will assert at last what I am perceiving as the world of name and form is actually the consciousness alone. But for the time being, we can understand that let us forget about that consciousness at this time being. For the time being, let us forget about it. That external world, what is there, I don't know. All the things, one thing I'm sure of, there is something. The existence I cannot deny. But what it is, I don't know. That isness, whatever the attributes which I'm seeing, is the projection of the mind on that pure isness. That pure isness is there on which all the attributes which I am, just as if imposing, is the projection of the mind. So that's the drishya. So now you will understand when the Yoga Shastra speaks of the evolution, that the conscious principle got associated with the Prakriti, from that evolved the Mahat, the cosmic mind. In that cosmic mind, already all those tanmatras are there. That cosmic mind now finds expression first as asmita. When you are in deep sleep, first you wake up, first you are aware of yourself, amness. And that asmita now finds expression as sattva through the organs of perception, as rajas through the organs of action, and tamas, there's all the tanmatra, the centers of piecemeal perceptions, there's the tamas. So that's how the entire that evolution is happening. Once the Purusha comes in association with the Prakriti, the 24 tattvas are gradually evolving from the Prakriti by its association with the conscious principle to create this world of virtual reality. So that's the thing which we have studied in the 18th and in the 19th Sutra. Now, after explaining the Drishya, they will explain the Drashta, the one who is seeing what is its nature. So, for that, now we will continue our discussion from the next sutra, for which we will refer to the text, and for that which we will share the screen. So, the 20th Sutra speaks of the Drashta, the one who is the seer, the Purusha, the seer. So, how it is explaining the seer? Drashta drishimatraha shuddhopi pratyayanu. Drashta drishimatra shuddha upi pratyaya anupashya. So the drashta, the seer, is pure consciousness, drishimatra, just seeing, just observing. There is no mutation in it. It is just the observer. That's what is meant by drishimatra. Matra means only. It's just simply seeing. It's a consciousness only. And shuddho api, and though it is pure, it sees through the coloring of the intellect. Means it's never actually really affected. But when the intellect is getting colored, pratyaya, this pratyaya means the contents of the vritti. Their mind is constantly breaking into waves. When you are looking at the flower is actually as if reflected in that wave. That reflection is the pratyaya, the content of the vritti. That is the knowledge. What the drashta is doing is constantly visualizing the content of each and every thought wave. That's what it's doing. But while doing that, what is happening? It's getting identified with that reflection. And that's constantly happening. So in the commentary, that example has been given that when you place the prism, a red flower in proximity of the prism appears to be red. It has not really become red, but the tinge of redness is as if that redness is as if tinged, is as if coloring that prism. The prism is as if getting tinged by the redness, but actually there is no change. So consciousness, being in association with the Prakriti, appears to be affected by the dualities. That's constantly happening. So in the three ways, the Buddhi indicates its association with the Purusha. So how it indicates? The first is it appears as illumination or consciousness. With our ordinary mind, when we are trying to understand our nature, we feel it is the mind which is conscious, it is our intellect which is conscious. But the yoga, the Vedanta, they say that the mind actually is as inert as an inert object, as any other inert object. It by itself doesn't have the capacity to illumine. It is illumined by the conscious principle. And once the mind is illumined by the conscious principle, it in turn illumines my organs of perception, my feelings, my emotions, everything is being illumined by the mind, which has already been illumined by the conscious principle. And that can be explained the way the earth is illumined by the moon on a full moon night. And a full moon night, I think the moon is illuminating the entire world. But what has actually happening? The sun, which is illuminating the moon, is not visible to me. It's the reflected rays of the sun which is perceived as the illumined moon. I think the moon is illumined. The same way, the mind is like the moon. So in our scriptures, that's why you will find in many places, the moon has been equated with the mind. The moon is not the mind. Why the moon has been equated with the mind? Just to understand the way the moon appears to be an illumined object, but actually it doesn't have its own illumination. It's the sun whose rays are reflected on the moon, which again is reflected. The vimba prativimba. Reflection, again re-reflection. So there is a vada called vimba prativimba vada, which explains the way we find that moon is actually itself, the rays of the moon is itself reflected. That again is being reflected on the earth, is illuminating the earth. The same way, the mind appears to be illumined because it is in association with the consciousness, with the Purusha. That makes it appear as illumined. By itself, it is just as inert as any other inert objects. So, Buddhi is also an evolute of nature, just like the body. It appears conscious because of the reflection of the drashta, the conscious principle on it. It is just like the moon illuminating the earth on a full moon night. So, this is the first indication that there is Purusha behind the Buddhi. The second is very interesting, the faculty of awe. As a human being, you will find that we are bound to have that faculty of awe. To give an example, a small child, nowadays it is so difficult to uh, relate for the small child with all the mythological stories. And sometimes we don't encourage much because we find the child asks 1,000 questions. And sometimes we don't have the proper preparation to answer those questions. We ourselves avoid. And we think that those are the things which are not required for the child's growth. Let him be intelligent, let him have a very rational mind. All those things are not required, they're secondary. But we forget one thing: as a human being, we can never, we can never get rid, we can never ignore that awe faculty. See, the reason for which we don't introduce the mythologies to the child, that reason actually doesn't work. You will find a very interesting thing. When the child returns from the school, immediately he won't even get the time to open the shoes and keep the school bag. Somehow he manages to throw them. First thing, will go and just open the monitor, either of the TV or of some, what you say, that video display. And they will start seeing the cartoons. So many types of cartoons are there. The Spider-Man, Batman. Nowadays, even the cartoons, so many cartoons are there, even I am not aware of, but you know, the children are so much almost hooked to it. And what they're seeing, all sorts of nonsense, the things which are never possible in reality. Those characters are doing something, that the Spider-Man is climbing the wall, jumping on the 20-story, on the top of the 20-story building. All those things are being shown, and this child is totally hooked up, is totally focused on those characters. It almost gets identified with them. Why it happens? Because of the faculty of awe. What is happening, very interesting. That though we are constantly aware of the fact that I was born at a certain point of time, I'm going to die. As per my strength is concerned, as per my knowledge is concerned, everything is limited. But something within me constantly says, you are unlimited. In our scripture, it is very nicely told, Sa anantaya kalpate. I can never think myself limited. I always think I am beyond all the limitations. Why it is happening? It is because of the echo of the conscious principle. The conscious principle by which our mind is associated, this body-mind complex is associated, that is limitless. That is beyond all limit. That is beyond all limit. The moment it gets reflected in the buddhi itself is a flow. It's constantly changing. It's constantly mutating. But the echo of that transcendental Purusha is being reflected on that. And now the buddhi starts, because of that echo of the transcendental nature of Purusha, it starts thinking, I am beyond all dualities. In its day-to-day life, constantly it finds it has a lot of limitations. But somehow it wants to deny that. And all those characters become the way to relate to that limitlessness. The character that's actually speaks of the faculty of the awe. The child comes, sits down, and gets identified. You will find that it's not only visualizing. Even in day-to-day life, it tries to behave like a Spider-Man. It will go to the shop and purchase a garment which has that mark of that S or something, that, and he starts feeling, I am also like that. That faculty of awe. You will find the young person that always trying to imitate the heroes of the movies, because in the movie also you will find those characters are behaving, are their characters are behaving in super normal way, the strength, everything, and somehow we try to get identified with that. And the young generation, you will find, sometimes get so much identified, they try to dress that way, they try to have the hairstyle that way. Why? Again, that awe faculty. Why? That the limitations, we don't want to agree that I am limited. So that awe, we limit to that, we try to relate to that unlimitedness, sa anantaya kalpate. Why it is happening? Because the purusha, which is getting reflected in the buddhi, which has its limitations, but the Purusha, which is limitless, its reflection is making it feel, I am also limitless. Constantly, it is failing to realize that limitlessness in its day to day life. Only through that awe faculty, somehow, it tries to satisfy itself. And we cannot get rid of that. So now you will find very interesting thing, that all those mythologies, the science behind is to take the help of that awe faculty to rise up in love. In our day-to-day life, what happens, very interesting thing, the same awe faculty makes us to fall in love. I will say a very, very funny incident in the life of Swami Vivekananda. When Swami Vivekananda was in the West, he was speaking of the nature of our self, the non-dual self, that you are beyond all limitations. And all were inspired. Suddenly, one person got up and told Swamiji, you were speaking of that non-dual consciousness as our reality, but in practice, you are all idol worshippers. How you relate this to? You speak of the conscious principle as your reality, and then in your practice, you have some idol in your vicinity, in your front, you place it in the altar and worship it. How you relate this to? Swami Vivekananda had a very mischievous smile in his face. He never gave the answer directly. He started pacing up and down the dais, and then stopped and pointing to the person who questioned him, he told, why? You also are idol worshippers. That man was taken aback. He was a bit surprised. He told, how come, Swamiji, that we are idol worshippers? And then the way the Swamiji gave a very funny reply. He told, why? You, the young man, won't you kneel down in front of a young lady and say, oh, you are the angel? So that's in a funny way. What's happening? It's an idol worship. A woman in flesh and bones, because of that awe faculty, you think something, oh, she's heavenly. And in a very short time, when they start living together, you find, no, nothing, that all the heavenly factor is gone. Now, all those impositions have gone. That what has happened? Then you find, I have actually fallen in love. We always use the word, because we always, at last, we find that because of that infatuation, we fall. That awe faculty has actually forced us to fall in love. The same awe faculty actually was used by all the perennial philosophies of the world to rise in love, not to fall. Those same awe faculty was used in such a way that I rise in love, that it enables me to liberate. When you read the character of Rama, of Krishna, they're also supernatural. But those supernatural character, you will find, is interwoven with the spirituality in such a way that at last, with that awe faculty, you are dissociating yourself from the Prakriti and getting more and more attuned to the world of spirit. The same awe faculty was used. So now you will find that how important it is, in the name of rationality, when we just totally try to negate all the mythology, the symbols which the world has developed, through the process of evolution. It was not that someone sat and planned to have all those things. It evolved because of that awe faculty. In our day-to-day life, constantly it finds expression. In you get totally bored by your day-to-day activities, duties, and then you want a change. You take a few days leave, spend your money for what? You go to some that beautiful scenic place, mainly at all the scenic place at last can be, you can just boil down to two things. Either it's the tire of mountains or the ocean, the limitless expanse of the ocean. With that awe faculty finds expression. You get absorbed in that limitlessness. You go to the Himalaya mountains and see the tires of mountains, that sense of limitlessness, that awe faculty relates to that. You're spending money just to relate to that awe faculty, and you're relieved. So that's the faculty of awe. That speaks of the Purusha, the who is the limitless, who is constantly echoing through our mind. The mind is within the limits, it's always within the dualities. But somehow something is echoing behind that saying, you are limitless. And we are constantly chasing that. And that's the faculty of awe, which speaks of the conscious principle behind our mind. And it is this conscious principle which which is echoing through our mind, explains the entire process of evolution. Just take a small microbe. It knows very well a little extra stimuli, a little more light will kill it. A little more change in temperature will kill it. But something within it is saying, I am beyond death. So what it does, how the evolution happens, because of that ignorance, that as body-mind complex, it is never limitless, it is never eternal. But the self behind that small microbe is saying, you are eternal. So what it does, it now fights with the nature. What it does, it will just conglomerate with other microbes. And now they equip themselves to fight against nature. There will be division of labor. Alone, for me to do digestion, to take respiration, circulation, all those duty when I do alone, I cannot fight with the nature. I cannot equip myself well. So we conglomerate, and there's a division of labor. You will find a microbe, actually, a single cell is doing everything. But as a human being, so various cells are specialized. Heart cells are doing the circulation. The nervous system is doing all our perceptions, digestion. Our digestive system is doing the digestion. So they have all specialized, so that we can fight with the nature as if to become immortal. We want to become immortal. And that's how the evolution has happened through the ignorance. The same awe faculty is working. And out of ignorance, I am thinking the one who is echoing that you are immortal can be realized. And then as a human being, the evolution cannot be in a straight line. It is a cycle. That the human being is at the apex of evolution. As a human being, we can realize the fact that it is out of ignorance we were trying to conquer nature. But actually, I am already eternal. It was my association with the Prakriti which made me feel that I am just mortal. I have to become immortal. That urge for immortality was my real nature. But as I got associated with the reflection, I was never realizing it. I was already that. I won't have to become immortal. I'm already that. For that, I just have to dissociate myself from this wrong identification. And thus the ignorance falls from the eternal Purusha, that's conscious principle you started. Again, that evolution, the physical evolution stops. Now the spiritual evolution takes you back to your real nature. So that's how, very nicely, the Yoga Sutra will say, then the work of the Prakriti is to take you to the experience, at last taking you to liberation. Bhoga apavarga. And all this is how it is happening because of that faculty of awe. So that's the thing which indicates that there is a self behind. Otherwise, why should that, knowing it with fact that we are going to die, we cannot be eternally happy? Why we are chasing after it? Because something is there behind which is beyond the limitation. So this faculty of awe actually speaks of the Purusha. This is the second. The third indication which the Buddhi gives, that there is something beyond the what you say, that beyond the mind, the eternal conscious principle, which we have already spoken, the synchronization of the various piecemeal perceptions with which we today started our discussion, which is happening to give a sense of wholeness of whatever we see. Unless the conscious principle is there as the screen, as the background, when you are watching the movie, constantly the pictures are changing, but you need that immovable, that unmoving screen for all those constant change to be projected to give you a sense of reality. So what is that eternal background on which all the piecemeal perceptions are getting synchronized? That's again the yoga is saying is the conscious principle. So each sense organ has a discrete center of perception. Then how do piecemeal perceptions harmonize to give a sense of wholeness? So, for example, when someone is speaking, we see and hear the person simultaneously. How does it happen? It is the Purusha behind the Buddhi, where all sensations and perceptions harmonize and integrate to give a sense of wholeness. So, in the Vyasa Bhashya, these three indications are being mentioned, which explains that behind the buddhi, the conscious principle is there as the drashta. When it is there, immediately the prakriti starts becoming active in various ways. Sri Ramakrishna has a very funny way of uh, relating to this fact. He says, in a family, when some festive event is there, some marriage, wedding ceremony or something, in the olden days, we will find the lady of the house, the most probably the mother of the boy or the girl who is going to get married, you'll find is extremely active. She has all the keys tied to the what's the end of her sari. She's running, extremely busy. And the man, in the olden days, Swamiji is giving that example, is just relaxing. He is just having a hookah, the pipe in his hand, and he's just smoking and relaxing. And the lady will come now and then and just relate what all work already has been undertaken, what she's going to do the next work. And the man simply nods and says, okay, go on. So that's the example Sri Ramakrishna is saying. The Purusha is there sitting relaxed just to nod. And for that, the Prakriti is doing everything, but she needs that nod of the Purusha to continue with all the activities. As long as he is there, uh, to just to whom he can relate, she becomes active, extremely active. So this Prakriti, that's why this the house lady, Sri Ramakrishna is equating with the Prakriti, and the one that the relaxed Purusha sitting there is the Purusha. So he is required for the Prakriti to become active. So that's how, with the association of the Purusha and Prakriti, the entire panorama is being recreated. So now the question is why nature comes in association with the Purusha? Why? Tadarthang eva, this 21st Sutra speaks of Drishyasya Tadartha eva Drishyasya Atma. The nature of the experience, that is the Prakriti, is verily for him, the Purusha. It has no purpose of its own to take the Purusha through the process of evolution, as we were telling, the first to the Bhoga and then to the Apavarga. Swami Vivekananda is giving the example that the Prakriti is like a book. Someone says this particular book is the best seller. It's a very interesting book. And then I don't know what's the content of it. Then I start reading. Page after page, I go on turning. And I get totally absorbed in it. And when I reach the last page, now the book has been read. I know the contents of it. That book is of no more interest to me. Now I keep it aside. So Prakriti, like the book, is there just for the experience of the Purusha. It takes him through the certain experiences. At last, when it has got the knowledge of his own self with its association with the Prakriti, at last Prakriti is something which we get rid of, get dissociated. There is no use of it. So for the bhoga and the apavarga of the Purusha, the Prakriti is there. In the Sankhya philosophy, there is a wonderful sutra. The Sankhya and Yoga are the twin philosophies. Sankhya speaks of the philosophy and Yoga speaks of the practice. Uh, to just categorize broadly. So in Sankhya philosophy, there is a wonderful sutra which is we have just mentioned here, Sanghata Pararthatvat. That in this world, you just take anything which is if which has formed by the conglomeration of very small uh, uh, constituents. That various constituents conglomerate together to form a whole. Once that whole is formed, that whole doesn't serve the purpose of any of those conglomerates. If the example will, any example will help you to understand what I am actually speaking. Just say the room in which I am sitting, or the room where you are at present. What's the room constituted? It's constituted of bricks, cement, maybe some log woods, and it is having you have lighted the room, the electricity is there, the light is there. If it is hot sultry season, the air condition is there, or the heater is there when it's the winter. All those things are the constituents of the room. But does the room serve any purpose for the heating system, for the brick, for the cement, for the mortar, for the log wood by which it is constituted? The room doesn't serve any purpose for them. It serves the purpose for someone who is not a constituent of that room. Say me. I am the one, I am not a constituent of the room. I come from outside, and for me, the room serves the purpose in various ways. It is giving me shelter, or when I am using it as a shrine, it has a particular purpose. So it is serving the purpose for one who is not a constituent in this world. So in Vedanta, they say the microcosm and the macrocosm are built in the same manner. If you know the constituent of a sand particle, you know the constituent of the entire universe. If you know the how the atom is composed, you know the composition of the entire universe. Even a small child will understand that how we explain atom. There's a nucleus, electrons are revolving around it, isn't it? The sun is there, around which the planets are revolving. So you will find the same pattern is actually replicated in everything. So if you know one thing, you can know everything. As Sri Ramakrishna used to say, when the house lady is cooking rice, whether the rice is cooked or not, to know that she need not have to press each and every rice. When the rice is boiling, she just picks up one rice, presses it between her finger, finds it has become soft, and she understands all the rice have become soft. So that's the wonderful example Ramakrishna is giving. Just study one phenomenon, you know the entire phenomenon. So here also, the same way that what you say, the microcosm and the macrocosm is built in the same manner. If you study any in this nature, anything which is actually conglomeration of various constituent, you go on studying, you won't find that the whole, the thing by which all this thing has been made up, it is not serving the purpose of any of the constituent. It is serving the purpose of something else. In the hospital you go, the doctor, the nurse, the building, it's not serving the purpose for them. It is serving the purpose for the patient who is coming from outside. So everywhere, anything, the school, the college, the university, the thing by which it is made, It doesn't serve the purpose for them. It serves the purpose for someone who is coming from outside. So it is parartha. It is for someone who is not a constituent. Then how can this psychophysical existence be in itself an entity which is meant there for its own enjoyment? Something apart from it must be there. So how wonderfully eh, they have this analogy has been used to understand that nature by itself cannot explain the entire existence. There must be something beyond nature, and that is be spoken of as samhata. All samhata means a composition, a composite, a thing which has become whole by various constituents coming conglomerating together. That is samhata, that is meant for parartha, for something which is not a part of it. Samhata pararthatvat. So that has been spoken of in this sutra. So example given by Swami Vivekananda by comparing nature with a mirror, which goes on reflecting more and more clearly the nature of Purusha, ultimately leading to liberation. This how it is parartha. So Swami Vivekananda is saying that this nature is as if like a mirror. As with that example we were giving, in a small microbe, the Purusha is reflected very poorly. Now it's evolving. When it comes to human being, now there's a possibility of a clear reflection. You see the self. You realize that this association with the body-mind complex is out of ignorance. This is possible only in the mirror called the human mind. All those previous reflection was like something like very hazy reflection, that I see everything but I cannot see my own face. To see my own face I need a mirror. So I do, I go and stand in front of a, a muddy water, the water which is murky, and I just see the outline. I am not satisfied. Then I go to just in the vicinity of a clear lake. My reflection is better. Still, I am not satisfied. I go and then just find a shining metal, still better. At last, a mirror, which may be full of dirt. I clean the dirt, and then almost my replica is being reflected. Now I am satisfied. That's what the Prakriti is there for the Purusha. Through all the various evolution as various creature, at last ending in the human being, we find there's a better and better reflection of the Purusha is possible. That's why Swamiji is saying that the human being is the Taj Mahal of all temples. That's the best one. In that body only, we can have that the realization of our real nature. That's why it's the Taj Mahal of all temples. That's all this. But after all, this entire nature, whether it's a microbe or it's a human body, it serves the purpose of Purusha by taking it through the process of bhoga and apavarga. The bhoga is happening because of pravritti, because of our attachment, because pravritti means I am just, the vritti means encircling. I am encircling more and more towards the nature. And at last, when I realize that this is out of ignorance, that I'm already perfect, then comes the nivritti. That same, that encircling motion is now radially opposite direction. It takes you outward. So the entire process of evolution is meant for the Purusha to go through this process of bhoga and then apavarga. The bhoga is because of the pravritti, apavarga is because of the nivritti. And then at last, the Purusha gets identified from the Prakriti and it renders it the freedom. So this 22nd Sutra speaks very interesting thing, that once I am free, then why should the nature continue? Kritarthang pratrinashtopi anashtang tadanya sadharanatvat. With this sutra, we will end our discussion today. That though it is destroyed for one whose goal has been gained, yet it is not destroyed being common to others. But you may attain liberation through the process of evolution, but others are still continuing because their ignorance is yet to fall off. So the Prakriti's purpose is there for the others. Maybe for you, it has already fulfilled the purpose. So you are liberated. But the Prakriti continues for others. Just the way the movie show. They say it's a hit movie. The movie is hit how? For weeks together it is running. But who are seeing? Are the same person who's seeing it again and again? No. It's all the different person. The movie show goes on. The one who have already seen, his purpose is fulfilled. But the others are there. For them, that urge is still there. So that's how the movie show goes on. So similarly, the Prakriti continues for the others. So that's being mentioned in this 22nd Sutra. So Kritartha, though destroyed for the one whose goal has been gained. Krita Artha. Artha means the purpose, Krita means done. One whose purpose is fulfilled is Krita Artha. For him, Nashta, Prati Nashta, that the Prakriti is destroyed for that, for such person. But Anashtam, it is not destroyed. Tat Anya, for others. Sadharanatvat, for all others in general who are yet to go through that process of spiritual evolution, it continues there. So that's being mentioned in the 22nd Sutra. So we will continue. A few more sutras are there to discuss this nature of Purusha and Prakriti, and then we will be entering into the main Yoga Shastra, that eight limbs of yoga, this Ashtanga Yoga. That the discussion on that will start after we just conclude in the 27th Sutra, the discussion of the nature of the Purusha and Prakriti. This is a bit abstract. After that, on the 27th, from the 28th Sutra onwards, the practical practices will be spoken of in the Yoga Sutra, which we will be going gradually. I think the next class we will be finishing off this discussion on the Purusha and Prakriti, and from the succeeding classes, we will enter into that practical practices, the Ashtanga Yoga. One by one we will take up, and the discussion will continue as we proceed through the sutras. With this, we stop our discussion today. Thank you all. Namaskar.
Pranam Swamiji.
Namaskar.
Hari Om Swamiji.
Namaskar.